This is the new 2023 Honda Rebel 500, and it sells like hotcakes. Now, I don't know what hotcakes are or why they called this the Rebel. Now, this bike sells really well pretty much all over the world, but that doesn't mean it's rebellious.
Please, please don't turn me into a milkshake.
Quite the opposite. It's bog standard. Now, I actually quite like the way it looks. I think it's quite handsome in this cruiser style. I love the way that the tank sort of slopes down, and the wheels are this nice bronze color, which I think look great. The headlight's a nice bright LED, so you can see in front of you, which is nice. There's a few downsides. The front forks are chrome, which you can cover with some black gator covers, but once you notice them, they really stick out against the all-black motorcycle. The exhaust gets a lot of complaints from a lot of reviewers because it's really big and ugly and extremely quiet. The rear light setup used to be a lot worse. It used to be square and very boxy and stuck out a lot. It still sticks out, but at least it's rounded off and a big improvement over previous models. Now, Honda knew people would complain about the exhaust, and so they've given you a slip-on option, and that way you can just have the exhaust tip changed out to change the sound without having to spend a bunch of money switching out the entire system and having to tune your engine. Now, is the bike fast? No. But is it slow? Also no. The power is fine. It doesn't do anything unexpected. It's not going to blow you away. It's not going to excite you. You have enough power for the highway, enough power to pass, and more power than most 125s you see rolling around in Taiwan, but it's not exactly a super bike. Now, Honda says that this engine has been tuned to make power down low because it's a cruiser. I find it has pretty consistent power throughout the rev range, which works great. They've stuck this engine on a whole bunch of other models, and it's really reliable and actually a really good motor. The problem is that it's a parallel twin, and with engines like that, it just doesn't sound very good. It sounds, like a lot of people say, like a sewing machine. It has this consistent tick, 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 tick sound. Just doesn't really match the cruiser look of this bike. Pair that with this exhaust, and it seems like Honda engineered this bike to be as quiet as possible. It's actually a lot quieter than my scooter. Handling on this bike is actually great. It's got these big, wide, fat tires. It gives you a lot of confidence around corners. The earlier models used to have this wobble, which used to scare the crap out of newer riders, but now handles great. The bike is one of the lowest money can buy, which is fun, but honestly, it's a little bit too low sometimes. I myself have scraped the pegs many a times and made the rookie mistake of having my foot under the gear shift lever, and when I took a corner, I got my foot caught between the peg and the gear shift, and that was a very scary situation. So if you're a shorter rider or a woman, this is a great choice. If you're anything over like 6 foot, I don't know that you'll actually fit on this bike. The best part about the performance of this bike, though, is the gearbox. It's incredibly smooth. It never misses gears. I never get false neutrals. Sometimes I go into a wrong gear or in between a gear, and it's always my fault for being a little bit of a wussy with the gear shift, but it always tells me on the gauge when I'm not quite in gear. As for comfort, the bike is fine. It's a city cruiser, and anything under an hour, you'll be fine. Anything over an hour, and you will suffer. This seat gets a lot of complaints because it's really hard. I've driven this bike to Taipei, which took me 3 or 4 hours, and my ass, my knee, my back, everything hurt. So if you're gonna do this long distance, I would suggest swapping this seat for something else. Things get much, much worse for rear passengers. This bike is actually sold as just a one-seater motorcycle for some markets, but there's just nothing to hold on to for rear passengers, and the seat is incredibly small, incredibly hard. I've had passengers on the back of this thing for like 30 minutes, and it was nothing but suffering. Now, because this bike is so incredibly popular, there is a huge aftermarket support system for it, and so you can add a rear seat backrest or some other things to make it a little bit more comfortable, but as far as it is stock, not great. The mirrors are fine, they're nothing special, but they don't vibrate, and so I can see behind me really clearly. The gauge is okay, it's kind of a semicircle, and it displays the bare basics. It shows your speed, what gear you're in, the time, and that's it. There's no tachometer or anything like that. It's pretty bare bones, and there's just ABS in the front, so as far as creature comfort's concerned, it's pretty bare. Now, just because this bike is pretty standard and bare bones and not very rebellious at all, that doesn't mean that this bike is bad in any way, shape, or form. In fact, I bought one and I'm loving it. I've had it for about a year now, and This bike honestly isn't really in its natural habitat on straight roads in the countryside where you're going to be riding for a while. It belongs somewhere else, somewhere darker. Calling this bike the Rebel is like calling yourself the Judge. There's something cringy about how hard it tries, but tries it does. It wants to escape the sunset, not ride into it.
What's the point? School doesn't matter.
This bike belongs here, and here, and here. I don't know what it is, but there's something about nighttime when I'm outside looking at where all my money went is where this bike shows what it's all about. The rear seat is as comfortable as falling down a flight of stairs, but I don't care. This bike isn't for the passenger, it's for me. And like a moody teenager, I abuse this thing all night until my hands are raw. For as standard and as, I guess, boring as this Rebel is, it makes you feel something.
You are tearing me apart, Lisa!
And that's pretty much all that matters with motorcycles, isn't it? I mean, I've had bikes in the past that barely ran or leaked fuel or missed parts, but each of them had a personality or a setting or a time that made me feel good riding them. The bonus with the Rebel is that, well, it doesn't leak fuel or fall apart, and hopefully it's gonna run for a long time. That's part of the benefit of the Honda name, but for more practical reasons, I think if you're going to look at it from a Doug DeMuro perspective and give it a score, then the score will have to be out of 90 instead of 100 because I'm taking the practicality section out of it because, well, it's a motorcycle. And as for styling, I'd give it a 7. I wouldn't say it's unbelievably gorgeous, but I think it looks good. Acceleration is 5. It's got okay power, but it's not going to blow you away. You have what you need. Handling is a 6. It handles pretty well, it's just the pegs are really low and so expect to scrape them a lot. Fun factor is a 4. I mean, it's not, again, going to excite you, but it is still a motorcycle and that's fun enough. For cool factor, that depends. I'm going to give it a 6 for Taiwan because it does turn heads and does get attention from people who like bikes, but if you're anywhere else in the market, this isn't anything special and you're probably not going to get that much attention. Features is 4. It's pretty bare bones. 4 is actually kind of generous. It does have ABS in the front, which is nice, but it doesn't really have much else. Comfort is a 5 because this is a city cruiser, and if you're riding under an hour, it's fine, but anything longer, and it really isn't great. Quality is an 8. It's a Honda. I'm expecting it to last a long time. Nothing's broken, and the materials feel all right. Value is an 8. This bike sells for 300 grand here in Taiwan, and we get absolutely f***ed for motorcycle prices here. And 300 grand for a yellow plate motorcycle is a pretty good deal. It's even cheaper abroad, and it'll hold that value in the long run. Overall, that gives us a score of 53 out of 90, which is pretty good. If you're looking for a good quality, decently priced bike, the Honda Rebel might be for you.